Wonderful. Hi, everybody. I am very excited for this. So you all are going to get that invitation for Menti right now. We should, should just be seeing the cover screen, sharing the screen, and then you should also have like a little skinny window that is the Menti tool itself. So I'm really excited. I am sick of long Zoom webinars where you just sort of sit there and listen. And so, oh, I'm getting hearts for that. Other people are sick of that too. So I decided to make this. I always challenge myself, even with remote meetings, to make them as interactive as possible. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So if you are on your phone, that's totally cool. I'm going to have instructions for that as well in a second if you're not seeing it in Zoom. But I'm really looking forward to doing this and getting a little taste also of like how I run my courses and trainings. So using Mentimeter, the one trick with this that is a little unintuitive is that after you select your option, there's going to be a submit button. You have to hit the submit button because otherwise it just doesn't give me whatever input you put in. There's also a heart. So if you want to be showing your support, I'm loving seeing that. It's really nice so that it doesn't feel like I'm alone in my office presenting to nobody. So for all of you who are hitting that heart button, that's awesome. And then you can also see below that there's that open Q&A button. So that's where if you have any Q&A, drop it in there. And that's going to then make sure that it gets into the app for me. So if for whatever reason the Menti isn't working right now on your computer, this is the instructions, and these will be at the top in a little bar on every single slide that has interactions. You can go to menti.com, enter that code, and that will get you into the presentation anyway. So, oh, and somebody already submitted a question. That's awesome. We're going to get to those later. So warm up a little bit. Let's make sure we know how to use the tool, get to know the audience a little. What's your company's approach to product ops right now? Do you have product ops? Don't you have product ops? Is it oh, never, we ain't touching that? Or is it yeah, we're thinking about it? We are seeing a little bit of a split. Only a couple of people, a little pink sliver of people who are considering it. We've got about, let's see, 1/3 that I can do math, 1/3 that have a separate product ops team, a little over half now that don't have a separate product ops team. Clearly everybody's getting used to using the tool and figuring this out. I'm seeing those numbers pop up, so that's really awesome. And here's the big thing that I want to get across today, okay? I don't care if you have a product ops team or not. Neither path is better or worse. They both work equally well. They don't both work equally well. Based on your strategy, they both work well. And so I don't think that it's like everybody has, despite the fact that I'm obsessed with product ops, my opinion is not that every company should have a separate product ops team. My opinion is that you should figure out how to do product ops because it exists in your company, right? If you build product and you have to do things like talk to other people to build that product and make documentation, if you have to communicate and understand data and talk to customers, all of the infrastructure that allows you to do that is your product operations, right? So you have product operations, even if there's nobody at your company with that title. And so that is a really critical piece to think about. Somebody said, can you start by defining product ops? I'm going to get to that in just a moment, because first I wanted to see how familiar are you with product ops as is, right? Is this totally new to you? Is this familiar? Have you been to some other presentations, or, I assume if you are a product ops person that you're pretty well versed. Oh my goodness, look at this distribution. It is all over the place. That is awesome. So we've got a huge number of different opinions and perspectives, and that's totally fine, right? And that makes total sense. So let's see. Oh, okay. And it's slowing down. Oh, a heart. I love it. So, right. So we've got a wide range of knowledge about product ops. I'm going to try to hit some topics that match everybody's thoughts on it. What we're going to be doing today, what is product ops? How most companies do product ops, whether it is with a separate team or not, but just sort of looking at the way the world works today. And then how does product ops help you scale, as well as lots of time for Q&A. As a reminder, if you want to submit a question, scroll down in the app to Menti, you'll see the little Q&A button at the bottom, and that's where to do it. So starting with that question, how do you define product ops? I would actually love to hear, so we've got so many people in the audience with experience. what's your definition? So drop your answer in here. Right. And while you guys are typing that, I will tell a little bit of a story about how I found myself in product ops, right? Because I was in a leadership position on a product team, and I found myself doing a lot of the stuff that leaders do, right? I was looking at my team and saying, okay, how do I unblock them to be able to help them do better product work? And so one of the things that was going on was that we didn't have a consistent road mapping process. Everybody was doing it differently, and this meant that executives didn't know how to put their own take on, like, they didn't know how to allocate what was coming up. There was a lot of confusion there. So I'm like, okay, I'll do a road mapping process, right? That works. And then we had to hire, we were hiring a lot. We were in a big growth stage. And so I started designing an onboarding process for product managers so that they could get familiar with the company. As I then also, responses are hidden. How do I will have to figure out, show responses. There we go. People are responding. So then, right, like as I, I added in an A/B testing process, all of these things. And I sort of looked back on that time. I loved all the work I was doing. I loved the way that I was really helping the product managers on my team thrive and do better work themselves, and realized that all of that was actually just product operations, right? So what are the things I see here for definitions of product ops, right? Scaling better product management, enablement for the product team and partners, process to align core product design engineering teams, measuring product usage statistics. So I'd put that one as like a subset of product ops, right? Maybe not all of product ops. Efficient development of product and associated communication, giving the product teams the resources, information, and processes they need to succeed. I love that one. Nicely phrased. Support process to manage product work, right? So you can see here from everybody's answer. Oh, building trust between revenue and R&D. That's that one is meaty, right? And building trust is so much of it. Right? A framework in which the product team operates. Making PM's lives easier so they can focus on the strategy and being the CEO over their product. Whether or not, however you feel about being the CEO over the product, making it so that their lives are easier so they can focus on the strategy, absolutely, right? A lot of product ops is taking the burden off of PMs so that they aren't worrying about how to be a product, how to do their work, but they can actually just do the work. A common definition is also like PMing the PM experience. So like looking at the product managers within your company as your customers and building out tools and infrastructure to help them. So yeah, lots of really strong answers here. Thank you all. Let's see. So trying to get to the next slide. So what is product ops? I use these 4 pillars. Some people use 3, some people use 6. There's a couple of major different frameworks out there to talk about product ops. They're all pretty great. This is just the one that I've developed over my own experience, right? And a big thing for me that's really important as you talk about product ops is you will see nowhere on this slide does it say process, nowhere does it say tools, nowhere does it say templates or procedures or rules, right? Because product ops, we are still product people. And so we are trying to enable outcomes. How do we make product managers better at using data? How can we help them understand our users? How can we create a sense of team ownership between product engineering design? How do we get great communication going from product to all of the other departments that are critical to know what product is doing? So these are the 4 pillars of product operations that I use. We're going to dive into each of them a little bit. So first, using data, right? I think that this one is so absolutely critical because if we don't have good data as product managers, if we don't have access to it, right, what are we actually doing? We are taking swings in the dark, right? But I've also learned that using data, well, takes a lot of work. So one of my favorite interview questions to ask a product manager is, tell me your analytics horror story. Because every single product manager who has ever had to use data has an analytics horror story where the events weren't aligned, or that, they had two events that were representing two different things, but they thought they were the same thing. And so then in the funnel was totally off and they had to then untangle everything and they made the wrong decision, right? Or, I'm sure every single one of you in the audience also has your analytics horror story. And so product ops helps try to take those away, because like I remember, one of that time when I had the events that were all like named, slightly different things, and turns out that they were the same thing. It took a huge amount of my time as a product manager to untangle that, to figure out what was actually going on, then to fix it. And all of that time was time I was not talking to customers, time I was not setting strategy, was not figuring out the right thing to build. I was just fixing analytics. So product ops can be hugely helpful, right? Having good processes and understanding in place to help people use data. Understanding users. So another story, right? This is all about how can you make it so that it's not to put product ops in the middle between the customer and the product manager, right? That is the last thing we want. We want to make sure that we are using ops to bring the product manager and the customer closer together. So here, right, where I wish I had more of a product ops structure at my organization, I had just joined a company. I was a brand new product manager, and I was like, oh, I need to talk to customers. This is important. So I went to my manager. I was like, how do I talk to customers? He said, oh, you can't. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, customers are owned by sales and these brokers. I was in insurance. And so the brokers won't let us talk to their customers. And so we have to find all of these workarounds in order to talk to customers instead. And I was like, but you guys said like that this is a really customer centric company. You pride yourselves on that. It's on the website. And he's like, yeah, I know, but like, what can we do? So what I did is I went down to Starbucks with a stack of gift cards and stood in line. And I said, I will give you this gift card to buy you coffee if you will answer these questions for me. And turns out that that was how I had to do my user research. That is not, again, the best. I was not necessarily getting the best sample size, right? I was not getting a representative group of customers. And ultimately, the company couldn't really say that they were customer centric if that's the hoops I had to jump through in order to talk to a customer. So team ownership. This one, I think, has really come into its own post-pandemic, because when everybody was working in person with your team, when that was the most common setup, there wasn't that much of a challenge of team ownership, because everybody hanging out together, there was just, naturally, like, you'd overhear conversations and everybody would have a sense of what everybody else was working on. And you had a lot of rhythm and just like day to day that would help you connect. As we're remote, it's now a lot harder to make sure that engineering, product, and design are all on the same page. It's getting harder to pull everybody together. And so that's where team ownership really comes in, right? Thinking about, like, for instance, I've got a client right now, right, where they've been sort of doing this handoff system where one team would work on one piece and another team worked on another piece. And then at the end of both pieces, each of them would write a document. Turns out that the documents had a lot of stuff that was overlapping. They weren't working to, they weren't communicating about this stuff. And then everybody was handing those documents over to marketing to be like, okay, here we go. And we'll get to that handoff to marketing in just a minute, right? But on the team, like, those two groups that were building stuff didn't have a sense of ownership, because they both sort of felt like, oh, well, I was told to build this part, so I'll build this part. And I was told to build this part, so I'll build this. And at no point did anybody say, are we building the right thing, right? That's what team ownership is about, where everybody on the team can say, hold up, are we building the right thing? Is this the right thing to do? And there are ways that ops can actually help you with that, right? So one of the things I did with that client, and as I said, hey, instead of writing two documents, you all are now going to collaborate on one document and work together on it to figure out, is this, and the document is going to ask, is this the right thing to build? And so that's where we're really going with this, is, right, team ownership. How do you create that sense of community, that sense of collaboration, so that everybody feels like they're building the right thing? And then we've got cross-department communications. So as I was saying, right, here we are with my client. They've got all these different documents. They're now passing them over to marketing and sales and saying like, okay, marketing and sales, go do your thing. How do you think that marketing and sales was able to handle it, right? They're just handed a pile of documents and are told like, go and sort through this. And who do they go to get questions answered? The first team that wrote the doc, or the second team that wrote the other doc, right? How do they resolve contradictory info? And so product ops can also hugely help with these cross-departmental communications, right? Whether it's here's what's actually being shipped, right? Here are the release notes, or as you know, as I say on the slide here, right? Like what's on the roadmap? I don't know what's on the roadmap. Product never tells me what's on the roadmap. That is the thing that every single other team at every company says nonstop. And even if the product is like, well, I email you the roadmap every single day, and they're like, I don't know what's on the roadmap, right? But at the end of the day, product ops, we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get this information across, right? How do we make it easier for everybody to know what's going on? Keep them in the loop, follow up with them when something is being built, or when we say, you know what, we looked at that and it's not the thing we're going to be building. But product ops is how we handle all of this communication. So let's see how well you're all listening. Quick quiz. Which of these are part of the using data pillar? So these are all different product ops activities. And let's give it a second. So you can select multiple answers, and don't forget to hit that submit button at the bottom. Once you have selected them. Oh, seeing some opinions. Oh, it seems there's, okay, so using data. Okay, I am seeing some consensus here. I'm seeing a lot of consensus. It is growing. You all are submitting. Let's wait for those numbers to slow down. Take a break, take a sip of coffee. As you can tell, I need to be caffeinated more. I'm low energy. Oh, I'm glad people hearted that. Hopefully that meant you were laughing. Okay, so let me get these answers revealed. So here is how I see it, right? And I will admit there was a little bit of a trick in this one. I'm sneaky that way, right? Building a best practices guide for a product management tool, it's going to depend on the tool. But if the tool were, you know, a Pendo or a Mixpanel, a Heap, you know, all those analytics tools, it's absolutely part of building, of using data. Organized or ran a roadmap review session? Yeah, maybe not, right? That's not going to be, I mean, I would love it if all roadmap review sessions were super data driven. Usually they're a little bit more outside of that. But yeah, data validation, creating a product performance dashboard, KPIs, OKR planning processes, right? And I'm sure you're looking at this list and you're like, oh, wow, that would be great if our, you know, if we were better about our OKR planning, our KPI planning. So absolutely. Next one, understanding users. So same thing, right? You can select multiple options and scroll down, hit that submit. And unfortunately with this tool, I can't have the like, it depends button. It's pretty binary, yes or no. So many questions coming in. This is awesome. This is awesome. Also, you can upvote questions as much as you want as well. Okay, so here you all are doing pretty great, right? Like understanding users. So an A/B testing framework, I would probably put that one more in the topic of using data, right? A/B testing is not necessarily going to be about bringing the customer and the user closer together. But what I'm really trying to communicate with all of these is not that there is a right or wrong answer about what is part of the pillar, right? But much more of like, these are all product operations tasks. And once you start thinking about them in terms of the pillars, it can really help add that structure to like, okay, these things are related, they build upon each other. These things are less connected, and maybe, you know, they're not going to help each other thrive together. So scheduling a customer interview, absolutely. And especially once you start automating scheduling customer interviews, right? That's a huge value add that product ops can do, is if it makes it such that product managers just get calendar invites where a customer is going to show up and talk to them. Setting up a user research repository, coordinating beta testing. These are all things that can help a product manager get closer to their customer and understand things better. Team ownership, right? So back to that idea of like, how do we make the whole team feel responsible for the work that we're doing, what we're building together. Okay, so team ownership. This one is a little, so this one, pretty much everything can be a part of team ownership. And yeah, I said creating a process for stakeholders to share ideas is not, but maybe, depends on, right, if it's if it's the team itself that's wanting to add that, then maybe yes, that one is also. I would also say, right, a tool for tracking bug reports can be a huge help for creating that sense of team ownership, because it makes it so that bugs are not just the responsibility of QA, right, or engineering, but it makes it so that the bugs are right, because bugs, just like features, right, are the responsibility of the entire team. So I actually think that that one can be very helpful for creating that sense of team ownership, but not right. Like, again, this is not where there's like right answers and things must be in a certain way. Okay. And finally, cross-department communication. So this is really about like, how do you make sure that all of those other departments that have to interact with product understand what product is up to, what's going on there, and how to communicate that, right? Like, oh, there's so much communication that's critical, right? The more that we do it, the better. And okay, so one thing that's interesting here is where, yeah, we already are seeing a lot of consensus here, right? So we have four where there's a lot of agreement, right? Facilitating postmortems, coordinating with stakeholders, um, process for users and stakeholders to share ideas with the product team, organized and running roadmap review sessions. I gave you that one. I told you that one already, right? I am really, so for me, like, communication is so critical to what a product team does, that I think, like, I take a very broad view of what ends up in cross-department communication and thinking much more about the goals of it, right? So like setting clear boundaries on what is or is not part of a product manager's role. That's something where it's like, okay, so how do we do that handoff between product and product marketing, right? Setting those boundaries and making sure they're clear, that can be a huge help, so that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and when. Building a best practices guide for a tool. Again, I'm going to say it depends on the tool. I know I'm being sneaky there. And this time I said that it was part of the answer, and last time I said it wasn't, because why not mix it up a little bit? So yes, this is awesome. You guys are doing great. Vision is, oh, Jeff just said vision is still very important as a product leader. It absolutely, vision is always important. This is 100% true. Okay, so we've got a lot more content to come, including like talking about what all of this has to do with scaling a product team. But since I just covered a ton of content, I wanted to take a second to open the Q&A. So how do you, and I'm gonna save some of these for later because I'm gonna answer them at another time. So let's see. Can I see all questions? Aha, here we go. So how do you set the core functions that product? I am looking at these are such good questions, and I am now realizing that I'm answering a lot of these later. I'm going to mark how do you define product ops as answered. Yeah, I am actually, you know what, you got your guys' questions are too advanced. So I am gonna skip on forward. And thank you all again, right? So again, if you do want to add more questions or vote on questions, you can go down in Menti, click on that Q&A button at the bottom. What is going on with product ops today? And hopefully I'll have answered some of these questions by the end of this. So right, like I sort of told a little story earlier about my experience as a product leader and in doing a lot of product ops work. So what I wanted to ask is which of these are the most important product leadership responsibilities, right? There's 5 of these here. If you can try to give each of them a 0, 1, 2, or a, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as your votes, that's great, but just, which are more important, which are least important. It can't be that they're all the most important thing. So they're largely based on a book called Product Leadership by Martin Erickson. Right. But okay, we're seeing a lot of votes come in here. And some. Well, so I can see how these are moving. Everybody's like, but I want all of them to be the most important. And everybody is having different opinions on which is the most important and which isn't. Though it does seem the talent development and hiring is maybe losing out here. So, in terms of product leadership responsibilities. But a lot of different votes coming in. 95, 98, 100 people have voted. Okay, I think we're probably at statistical significance here. So here's the thing, right? Where is product ops on this list? The answer is both. It is nowhere on this list, except maybe team effectiveness and collaboration. But it's also everywhere, right? Because if you look at every single one of these things, could it be improved through putting in better infrastructure, through some deliberate design, through some thoughtfulness around how your product team does these things? Absolutely, right? Managing upwards and outwards. If you improve cross-team collaboration, you're going to improve how you can manage upwards and outwards, or communicate cross-team communication, right? Talent development and hiring. If you are able to improve that sense of team ownership, then every single time somebody joins a team, they're going to be able to join with that sense of ownership as opposed to having to figure it all out on their own, right? And they're going to have a team to support them. Prioritizing ideas, features, projects, resources. The more data you have about who your customers are, the more data you have about how your products are performing, the easier that gets. Same with setting strategy, right? So product ops is everywhere within this. And what happens today? Most of the time today, we get shadow product ops, right? So things like that, back to that story of me in that product leadership role. I was shadow product ops. There was nowhere in my job description that it said that I should be working on figuring out A/B testing, A/B testing procedure so that we could make sure we always were running our tests all the way to statistical significance. But that was something that the organization needed. Nobody was doing it, and so I took it over, right? Everything on my list was shadow product ops. It was not in my job description. I was being asked questions about what's our product strategy and how is development going, and are we hitting our KPIs, right? I was not being asked about whether there was a good road mapping process in place, but I could see that I couldn't get to those other things without having the data, the customer knowledge, all of those other pieces in place. And so what happens in most companies is that shadow product ops emerges. These people are working in the background. They are they're working unofficially. They're trying to help the company scale. They're trying to solve these problems. As Cameron just commented, I've been punished for doing shadow product ops. Right, like that. I am so sorry, Cameron. That sounds terrible, right? Nobody wants to be punished for doing the stuff the organization needs. But the answer is that if it's not in your job description, how do you handle it? And why is this a problem? I would like to ask everybody right now. Which of these, how do you feel about all of these? Do you like to be recognized for your work? Do you want to advance your career? And you don't have to rank these. You can just give each of these scores. So they're not in order of importance. Just score them up, right? I'm guessing that the more votes that come in, yeah, all of them are trending over to the right, right? Because turns out that, yeah, I like to be recognized for my work, right? If I'm getting, as Cameron, Melissa, the people who are chatting, they're using the Zoom chat and just sending messages directly to me. So I've got that monitoring on the side. So that's where the random commentary is coming from Cameron and the others. But right, like, yeah, I want to be recognized for my work, right? Like all of that stuff I did to enable our product team to be able to build better products. That was important work. And I wanted to have somebody say, great job, Jenny, right? I want to work on things that will advance my career. Guess what? I didn't get the promotion after that role because I was not working on the things I was working on the things the team needed, but it wasn't the stuff that was going to move my career forward at that point in time, right? I ended up leaving to another company in order to advance my career because I wasn't getting recognized for that work. It's easier to get things done when I know what others are doing, right? Like, yeah, if I have to go and like ask around a company and say like, is anybody else working on this thing? It's really hard for me to get it done. So if I think that we need something, we need new infrastructure for product ops, and I don't know if anybody else is working on that infrastructure, that adds a lot more overhead to me trying to churn and find out what's happening, right? And I do better work when I set time aside for it, right? A lot of times these shadow product ops, they're like trying to like, oh, look, I've got a free afternoon here where I don't have any meetings and I just finished this thing. So I'm going to try and squeeze in to fix this one thing that's been bugging me for a while, right? And that's not when you're going to do your best work, right? You're going to do your best work when you can say like, okay, I have time for this. This is important and I'm setting it away. I am setting it aside. So my main point, if it's important, do it. If product ops is important, please do it. Set time aside for it. Say, this is important and we want to do it. If product ops is not important, please don't do it. Please say, this is not important. We are okay if our A/B tests don't all have perfect hypotheses and hit statistical significance, as long as they can give us directionally useful information. So we're not going to stress about this, and say like, we are okay with that. But maybe it is really important for you to hit statistical significance. I'm not opening that debate, by the way. If you want to talk about that, find me on LinkedIn later, and I'm happy to go there. But point being, for these so here's my thing with shadow product ops. If you have it at your organization, one, say thank you to them for the work they're doing. Recognize that it is important work. Recognize that they have been trying to provide value to their team. Two, put it in the job description if it's something that they should be doing. Make it so that it is clear that they will be promoted career advancement for doing it. If you aren't doing it, say, here is why, and be clear that we are not doing this. And then finally, help people set aside the time for doing it. So all of this, how does product ops help you scale? And I'm looking at the time and realizing I've been going long. So thank you all for your patience, but we're going to just keep barreling ahead. I hope you're having fun. I am. So which of these is improved by product operations? I think we talked about this, we talked about this earlier, and given the time, I'm going to skip ahead to how to make product ops happen. So as I said at the beginning, I don't think that any of the ways to do product ops are wrong. Right? You can build out a team. You can spread the work around between, using it as a career development thing for individual product managers, right? Say, hey, you're, PM over here, you're going to take road mapping and move that forward. And that's going to be part of your role now. And you're going to take this thing and we're going to have everybody do pieces of it. And that's how we're going to improve. And that's a really common way that it happens nowadays. Have leadership do it, right? Say leaders, your job is to unblock your teams. Therefore, your job is to do product ops. So all of those things, just please, please, please make it clear, make it explicit. Don't let it be shadow, right? So your next steps, right? So things to do here. One, figure out who is doing product ops, right? Because if you can bring that shadow product ops into the light, if you can actually say, here's what's going on, here's who's doing it, we have a clear strategy around it. These are the things that are going to enable all of those different tasks of leadership in order to help them scale, help the team grow, right? Decide how you actually want to do it. So do you want to build out a separate team? Do you want to keep it, as career growth opportunities, leadership? How are you going to do it? Build out your roadmap to get there. And note with this is all about like, okay, so how do we apply those same skills we have as product managers, understanding your users, understanding the current state, iterating, experimenting, launching? How do you do all of those things to help your team grow, right? How do you do all of those things to move forward? And that is how product ops helps you scale, because the more that you can help the product managers focus on the work that they need to be doing and not focused on how they get the work done, the faster they're going to be able to move, right? The more that you're counterparts across the organization know where to go to find out what's on the roadmap and find that information. And the less that they have to jump around Slack and ping everybody, hey, do you know what's going on with this? What's the status over here? The more that everybody knows where to go to find the right information, the faster everybody can move. So the more you invest in product ops, the faster your organization is going to be able to move, the faster you're going to be able to ship, the more that likely it is that you're going to have good data so that you're shipping quality products, that you're going to be you're going to increase your win rate, right? All of these things are so critical. And that's where product ops helps you scale. So identify, so here is a worksheet to help you with that first step of identifying your shadow product ops. It's a really simple worksheet. It's got a list of a lot of those things that you saw from the quiz earlier and a slot next to it. Who's doing it today? Fill it in. And what I've found with a lot of people who do this, that a couple of patterns happen. One is they see like, oh, I do know who's doing that. Or, I actually have no idea who's doing that. Or that one is done by 3 different people. I wonder if they're working together and they're aware that they're all 3 doing it. Sometimes it happens that it's the same people doing the whole thing all the time. And so it's, you've actually got somebody who's pretty much your product operations person who's doing everything. Sometimes it's that, okay, so I'm seeing there's some access issues with the link. I'm going to fix those after the workshop. And so if you are having trouble right now, we will be emailing the worksheet out afterwards. So don't stress about the fact that you can't access it at this very moment. Right. But then sometimes it's the same people doing it over and over again. Sometimes it's different people, whether it's leadership, whether it's individual contributors, right? But just like figure out what's going on today. And then also please do let me know what you learned from this, right? I promise this is a really simple worksheet, but it's really insightful. It just will help sort of open your eyes. And it's helped so many people start to make sense of how their product organization is approaching product ops right now. If this all sounds like a lot, guess what? This shouldn't be a surprise, right? Reforge. I am teaching product operations and infrastructure. It starts in exactly 2 weeks from today. I am so excited about it. It is going to be interactive like this. It's actually right now looking to be a small group. So we'll actually be able to be doing some stuff like a lot more breakout groups, small group discussions, pair shares, things like that. So it's going to be a chance not only for you to learn way more about like, okay, what are these next steps and how do we think about product ops and how do we move forward? But how do you create a strategy? How do you work together to pull that product ops out of your organization and make it explicit, right? So it's great for whether you have a product ops team or not. The course is going to be a mix of those people. And it's going to be a chance also just to meet both people who work professionally in product operations, as well as people who are just interested in the topic and wanting to learn more. So you're going to get a chance to network. And I've taught this course before outside of Reforge. It got a huge, the people who took it, nobody rated it under 4 stars. And I got a couple 5 stars in there. So I promise you it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. And I've also I've taken a lot of their feedback to make it better. It's because I want it to be up to the quality that Reforge always brings to its courses. So it's going to be a blast. And I really hope you join me. One thing I would love is as our last little interaction here, these are the 5 topics that are going to be in the course. And I would love to hear what people are most excited about within the course. And if you want to learn more about it, also in the follow-up email after the event, there's going to be a link to the course so you can read more and see more about what's going on. Developing a product ops strategy. That's a hot one. Yeah, so developing your product ops strategy, right? Just like developing product strategy is really tough. There isn't just so like, well, you should put this in this line and then this in this line and fill in the blanks and have it done, right? But there are some patterns to good product ops strategies. And one of the things I love is like when you get product ops strategy right, it actually clicks into your product strategy. Right. So if your product strategy requires you to have a really good sense of data from a certain customer segment or really, or dive deep into a certain customer segment. And then product ops, you can be thinking about, okay, how do we make sure we've got the data really great there? How do we connect our product managers to more people within that segment, right? Product ops can actually start to be a way to unlock product strategy, and they start to move in lockstep together, and that can be so much fun. So a lot of excitement about everything, though. I'm really glad about that. So I'm going to end with this. We're going to jump into Q&A after this, but I'm going to end with this message, which I hope you've caught so far, which is please don't do product ops by accident. Just do it if you're going to do it, do it. If you do want to enroll in the course, there's a link there. If you just want to hear me talk more about product ops, you can find me on LinkedIn and give me a follow. I post there pretty frequently, almost every day about it. You can do both. Don't think that because you're following me on LinkedIn, you can't join the course, or vice versa. Both of those are things to do to connect with me and follow up. And so now we are going to jump into questions. And there's been some that are upvoted, so I'm going to start with the ones that have been upvoted. If you want to add more questions, feel free. And I'm going to take the next 15 minutes to dive into questions. How do you know if product ops is succeeding at these 4 pillars? How do you measure improvements to team ownership, understanding users, and cross-department communication? So there's a lot to this, right? The basic answer is the same as like, okay, how do you do it as a product manager to know if the things you're shipping are improving the quality of your product, of your users' lives? You talk to users and you look at the data. So product ops, it's sometimes actually a lot harder to look at the data because you probably don't have every step of the product development funnel. It doesn't have telemetry, right? You don't know how many user stories are being written or how many ideas are being thrown out because after user research, it turns out they're not useful. So a lot of times I end up to using surveys and using user interviews, right? So for instance, one of the survey questions I always ask is how many users did you talk to in the last 30 days? And if you ask that once every 6 months and you see where's the number trending, is it trending up or trending down? That can give you a really good sense of are you making improvements around connecting to users, right? That's a behavior that actually connects to your objective. But it's going to depend on your strategy, right? So there's a lot to it. And I actually have an entire course. 1 hour and a half block of this class is more or less dedicated to exactly this question, right? How do you understand what the state of things is today? And then how do you measure improvements? How do you decide the core functions that product managers should be doing themselves and what a product ops function should take over? So yeah, this is a great question. And it's going to totally depend on what your product strategy is, right? So there's always going to be more product ops that could be done than can ever actually be focused on, right? Because it's a never-ending pile of work. But what I think where it really comes down to is how much time do you want your team to be spending on certain activities, and especially how much time you want your leadership to be spending on those activities. And so the more that you want to take your team out of the day-to-day of doing that product ops, right? And the more that you're feeling the pain, right? So like the more you grow, probably the larger the company is, the more likely it is that they're going to have product ops taking over some of these responsibilities. It doesn't necessarily need to be all of them. Right. A good example of this is DoorDash, which actually splits its product ops responsibilities, where like things like roadmaps and roadmaps are handled by product leadership. They've got an analytics team, right? If you have a product analytics team, by the way, guess what? You've got product ops, right? You've already got the start of a separate function. And then but then for like a lot of that cross-department communication, they actually have an operations person on the team who is collecting the info from all of the, from across the company to figure out, okay, what is everybody hearing about our product space? What do we need to know from all of these different departments as we think about our next feature? And then they're compiling that information, making sense of it in order to help the product manager out. Highly regulated companies, you're going to also generally see a lot more product ops, because if every product you ship has to go through a huge legal and compliance review, and maybe, and be medical devices, for instance, right? You need to file with the FDA and go through that process. Oftentimes expecting your product manager to do that along with all the rest of product management, not going to make sense. So it's a huge, it depends, but hopefully that helps. Is there a project management role within product ops? We have a product ops manager, but also see a need for a role specifically for a project manager. What are your thoughts? So this is another thing I dive into in the course. I talk about these different styles of product ops that are out there. There are some companies that have chosen, right? So as I mentioned, with that, like that heavily regulated compliance kind of space, sometimes product ops is going to be embedded on a team and going to have more project management responsibilities. But where product ops really helps unleash scale is where they're not stuck in project management land, right? Where it is much more about how are we putting in infrastructure to enable product teams to move forward themselves. And so again, depending on your strategy, depending on what you need, but if you're really trying to use product ops to unlock that scale, I probably wouldn't be looking at product ops for project management responsibilities, because that's going to mean that they are focused on getting one thing done, and they're not going to be looking across the board probably at all of the different teams and finding a common need, right? It's really the question of, do you want to help one team improve? I'm going to make up numbers here, improve by 50, or do you want to help 10 teams improve by 10? Right. And if you've got you're just you and you have the choice of those two options, one of them gets you 100, but it's spread across all the teams. Maybe that one team with the 50 is actually far more strategically critical to the company. And so it makes more sense to invest more there as opposed to peanut buttering it around to everybody. So definitely different approaches and options there. How involved should product ops be in strategy when we say that and they enable functional teams to focus on strategy? Does that mean they're only involved in tactical execution? Great question. So I think a lot of people look at product ops as being purely execution focused. And one of the biggest mistakes I see with product ops people is actually when they essentially they show up at a company and the product leader is like, hooray, product ops. I've finally been able to convince my company to hire somebody and I'm so excited about it. And so here is a list of everything I need you to do. And they just go, bleh, and they hand this big list to the product ops person who sort of picks it up and like, okay, well, that's a little gross, but okay. And then they say, okay, where should I start? Start at the top. Okay, I'll start at the top. And they go, okay, I've done this thing and I've done this thing and I've done this thing and I've done this thing. And at the end of the year, they go back to their manager and they're like, look, manager, I did all the things on the list. And the manager says, but we still have all these problems. And the product ops manager says, yeah, but I did everything you asked me to do. And the answer is that they just went through the laundry list instead of looking at the strategy, right? And it's like right, as a product manager, you're never going to look at the list of the things your stakeholders want and just start at the top and go and knock them out one at a time, right? You're going to look at everything that has come into you, right? All the things the stakeholders want, all the things the customers want, all the things that you've thought of, and you're going to try and make sense of it and come up with a strategy. And that strategy is then going to tell you what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And so as a product ops person, I've seen far too many people just go through the list because they sort of turn off that strategy side of it. And I think that the way that you really unlock the power of product ops, right? You unlock that ability to scale is that you develop that strategy. And so that also, right, as I said before, right, it should be absolutely dovetailing into the product strategy. The clearer the product strategy is, the easier it is going to be to also develop a supporting product ops strategy. So it shouldn't ever be that product ops is just like, hey, I'm getting things done, I'm execution, you should, back to giving me the project management stuff, right? It should always be, I am looking strategically at what this organization needs in order to continue, in order to achieve its goals. And I'm going to be figuring those things out. What can be an MVP for product ops or a team of one or not dedicated role? Also a really great question, right? And as I said before, it doesn't have to be that, you have a separate product ops team, but let's say you want to experiment with a separate product ops team. Again, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but go back to strategy, right? what do you actually want why do you want a product ops team? Do you have and what is a win that is going to win hearts and minds over to understanding and seeing the value of product ops? So this is one actually where there is the strategy side of it, but sometimes the strategy, just between you and me, it can actually be that you want to figure out who your number one stakeholder is and solve their number one problem, right? If you really want to move into product ops at your company, and you want to float this by them, and there's somebody who has the ability to give it a thumbs up from a budgetary standpoint, I would solve their problem. And it's right, like this is a different approach to strategy, right? Where I have to win one person or a small team's hearts and minds so they see the value. And then I can go and solve these other issues that I see that are of tremendous value to the organization. But if I make their lives easier, they're going to want to pay for this. And we're going to be able to get to some justification of the ROI. And then I can go on to all these other things. So sometimes that is actually the right strategy. It again, right, huge. It depends. Is it the ideal strategy? No. But we all work in organizations that are not ideal, and sometimes we have to deal with the politics. Okay. Is there a specific stage or size of the team where implementing product ops makes more sense? So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a size or a stage, but there are going to be some very clear signs that it is time for product. So that is time for a more deliberate investment in product ops. And it is going to be where people where so actually, right, one of the people coming on into the course for a case study is Christine Poirot. She started the product ops team at Pendo, and she'll go into the story in more detail, right? But essentially, she started the product ops team there because they had a product launch that just fell flat. It did not go the way that they wanted it to, and they were, they sort of did the postmortem. Okay, what happened here? Why did this product launch go so terribly? And it turned out, there were communication challenges and data challenges and all of these different things where people weren't talking to each other the way they should, right? And so there was just this moment of like, oh wait, we need this product ops team because we just put all this investment into a product and then we weren't able to get it out the door well, and that cost us. And so there is definitely there are symptoms when it's time to really start looking at a product ops investment. But I don't have a hard and fast rule of when it happens. There is definitely a scale, once you're in enterprise land, you absolutely need it. And every enterprise has product ops, right? Because they're going to have somebody managing their analytics tools. They're going to have people doing corporate communications, right? A lot of the functions that are product ops. It just might not be that it's unified. It might not be that it's to the service of product. And so it can be back to a strategic question. Do you want those people who are helping with product ops to live within the product team? Do you want them to live within operations, or are they somewhere else? Are they spread out around the company? There's all sorts of different ways to do it. And what style of product ops works for you is going to definitely be another major piece of what I cover in the course. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. And then I am going to say thank you. I'll try and answer a couple more of these questions also on LinkedIn over the next few days, because there's so many good ones here. Can you share your thoughts on how the need for product ops varies by stage of company? Oh, I think we just covered that. Is products a chapter itself, or is it part of the product management role? So, and this was asked about cross-departmental communication. I'm not totally sure what you mean by a chapter itself, if you mean like it's a department itself. Again, right, like how you shape your product ops is very much going to depend on your company. I mean, let's see. Would you expect a company to have a product ops team if they're already product analytics and program management, they handle tasks? So this is another good question, right? And this comes back to, is there going to be power to having those teams work together? So, if you want, so a lot of times with product ops, you'll find that fixing something in one area actually contributes to helping in other areas as well. So, with it, for example, right, if product analytics and program management that's working on roadmap communications, if they are working closer together, maybe then you start to see more opportunities because they're partnering to make sure that all of these stuff on the roadmap actually gets reported on afterwards about whether it hit its KPIs or not, right? So having them work together could be very advantageous. At the same time, sometimes that's not your goal, that's not your strategy, that's not a critical problem to solve. And so, or they're working together, they're working well together, even though they're not in the same department, even though they're not both called product ops. And so it's going to be a big, it depends. And broken record here, back to your strategy. So, uh, that was, whew, I need to go sit down after this, but that was a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for your participation. Thank you for your great questions.